Color me a little bit surprised, but I received an early review code for Assassin's Creed Shadows, and to be honest, after my initial impressions video where I got up to 4 hours with a preview build of this game, and I pretty much said that I wasn't feeling it, well, Ubisoft still decided to go full send and sent over this review code, and by the way, shout out to them for doing that. Now, 2023 into 2024 has not been kind to Ubisoft, and we all know of the cancellations, we know of the declining sales, and of course the talk of buyouts, and so the stakes could not be higher right now in 2025 when it comes down to the French publishing giant soldiering on with all of their hopes resting right now on the release of Assassin's Creed Shadows. More on that in just a moment. Also, before we dive too far into this one, I'd like to encourage you to seek out other reviews and reviewers of this game. I'm just a single dude out here with a microphone and a YouTube channel that, yes, happens to love the AC franchise, owning every mainline title since 2007. And again, yes, I have finished them all, even taking 100 hours to do so with Valhalla. But damn it, I did it. I checked it off my list, but I've got to be honest with you, in general, I really struggled with this reboot series. Origins was intense and could have been phenomenal except for the brutal level gating. Odyssey was a very good game as well, but Assassin's Creed, it was not, and you can fight me in the comment section on that one. Valhalla actually started off pretty well, but after about 15 to 20 hours, the repetition and the grind factor of that game was almost too much to bear. And of course, the last entry before Shadows, Mirage, was technically very solid for an AC purist like me, especially when it came down to the specific aspect of stealth, but was severely lacking in every other major area, like, say for instance, writing, which in that game was abysmal. But here's the catch. These modern AC titles are massive commercial hits. Valhalla, for instance, is the best-selling Assassin's Creed title of all time, and Ubisoft knows it. They know they've got that special sauce and a winning formula on their hands with these giant, open-world Combat Creed-style games. Why then create a tight gameplay loop with a banger narrative to please someone like me, an AC purist, when they can replicate what they did with Valhalla, take it to the bank, and sell it to the masses? Now, I say all this, and I wanted to set this all up as a means of context to let you know right now, I'm about 30 hours into my time with Shadows, touching the main storyline, settlement building, side content, most of the endgame, and a whole lot more. And I've got to say that this is the most fragmented, oddly constructed modern Assassin's Creed game I've ever played. The game looks like an ocean. It's 1,000,000 miles wide, but after further examination, you find it's barely an inch deep. And as you progress further and further into your shinobi samurai experience, you really start to see the core design flaws with Shadows. As a fan of this franchise ever since its inception back in 2007, I really wanted this to be the incredible feudal Japan AC title we've all been dying for. I mean, I really did. And, you know, maybe a decade ago, before Ghost of Tsushima, Rise of Ronin, and Sekiro, this game, the way it's constructed right now, would have been enough. But it's 2025, and Shadows is now entering a stacked lineup. And in my humble opinion, it's instantly starting way behind the curve. My name is LtBuzzLitebeer, and if you find this video informative, please consider hitting subscribe as we dive now into Assassin's Creed Shadows. Okay, to set up the backstory here, and this is interesting design choice number 1 out of about 1,000,000 the developers have made. Outside of about 10 minutes you spend with Yasuke here in the intro tutorials, you're going to spend your next 10 hours or so exclusively using Nawe and running through the majority of her story arc. Now, Nawe has been trained as a shinobi by her father, and together they reside in Iga, a communal society where everything is turned upside down when Oda Nobunaga, a daimyo or lord of Japan, pushes into Nawe's homeland in his attempt to unify Japan by might. As expected, you've got a massive battle here, heavy casualties exacted on both sides, leaving Nawe badly injured. And so begins her very lengthy rehabilitation, and also her tour of vengeance, mercilessly cutting through any that were part of the destruction of Iga, but more importantly for Shadows, her tracking down and systematic elimination of a league of highly placed members of society called the Shinbakufu. Already an accomplished shinobi, Naoe gains even more knowledge during her adventures, acquiring mastery ranks to unlock new weapons and shinobi skills, eventually uniting her with Yasuke in a common goal of freedom. From here, Naoe and Yasuke continue on together, forming their own community, building up a spy network, and slowly but surely ridding Japan of the plague known as the Shinbakufu. Now, for those of you who have played Odyssey, this group is very much like the Order of Ancients. Influential and well-placed members of the upper class bonded together with some common goal of power and domination. Also, while we're touching here on the subject, we might as well talk about the gameplay here during this compact 10 or so hour long Naoe campaign. And the first thing you're going to notice is just how heavy and reliant it is on cutscenes. And I mean, some of these are really long, like you're actually watching a movie. In general, I know what you're thinking right now, but Buzz, cutscenes are great. And yes, I agree they can be, but I found that recent Ubisoft games have not had good writing backing them, and so you see this opening volley of Shadows move from a little bit of action, a little bit of backstory, and then you've got this major cutscene, and it follows that form again and again, and I've got to say, it doesn't work very well. The pacing is way off, and just when you start to get a little bit of a rhythm going with some gameplay, combat, and stealth, it just comes to a full stop and you're hit with another 5 to 10 minute cutscene, and after a bit, it becomes really jarring. Furthermore, and this is a trend you're going to see throughout your time with Shadows, and again, I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you, the writing here is not good. Conversations elicit zero attachment to anyone or anything, and so the level of player agency or attachment to this entire world has been numbed down to the point of complete apathy. Also, the narrative and in general the voice acting is very average to below par. Feudal Japan is a time of ceremony offset by brutality, of extreme violence but calm serenity. And so when Naoe or Yasuke try to be lighthearted or just have a general conversation with whomever within the game and within this setting and narrative, it just doesn't work.
Why must samurai always battle one another? Because there is only one way for a samurai to get ahead. Ahead. I did not say it was a good joke.
It's also worth mentioning here that I actually set my game to canon mode, as I remembered from my preview that my choices had very little effect on the outcome of the story, so I turned that feature on in the menus and I played it through like a traditional Assassin's Creed game with no dialogue options. Another off-putting factor about this narrative, and one thing that really stuck out to me here, is that all the characters in this game have like zero facial expressions. Even when you feel they should be about to blow a gasket, their faces should be reflecting the gravity and the weight of that moment, whether that be extreme anger, fear, or excitement. And every time they just look so lifeless, like they lack soul. Now, we've seen previous AC games do this really well. For instance, Cassandra in Odyssey, and how she wore her feelings on her sleeve. I mean, even Ezio, back in the days of Assassin's Creed 2, was able to show emotion as well as to express it. But here in Shadows, the most we ever get is an occasional brow line and maybe a little bit of a long side eye. Of course, a well-known factor of Shadows, it features the dual protagonist system like we saw back in Assassin's Creed Syndicate, where you've got the fast, agile shinobi in Naoe versus the absolute unit of a samurai wrecking ball in Yasuke. Now on paper, this split concept sounds great, right? Two distinct playable heroes, each with their own play styles, but in reality, the game uses all of its core mechanics with just one of these. You see, Assassin's Creed has always used an interwoven triad of design pillars: stealth, combat, and parkour. And individually, if you isolated them, say Assassin's Creed Combat, it's not capable of holding its own versus other combat-centric games. But when you give the player the flexibility to move seamlessly between the three, that's when Assassin's Creed really shows its true colors. Player freedom to choose how to tackle a situation is and has been one of the hallmarks of this franchise, and only Nawe has free access to all of these mechanics. She can absolutely go in and stand toe-to-toe with a legion of baddies, but she also has the ability to, say, go around them, maybe to go over them, or to hide within their very midst, picking them off one by one. On the other hand, Yasuke is limited to just combat. To him, everything is a nail and he is a jackhammer. And this dude was clearly meant to be boots on the ground, in close quarters, and smashing targets in the face. Now the thing is, with the way he's overtuned for full frontal attacks, he is also exceedingly lacking in all the other areas of what makes an AC game, well, an AC game. He doesn't parkour or stealth with any proficiency, so you end up literally smashing through the front gates and 1v1ing everything in sight, which is a real shame. Now, I would have been fine with just Nawe living her adventures through the eyes of a shinobi, fast, agile, and reliant on subterfuge, but I would have been down to try out a samurai assassin with equal strengths of both parkour, stealth, and combat. And to me, I think that would have been a cool concept to expand and explore. But as is, playing as Yasuke, it just gets boring because of just how insanely strong he is and how limited your skill sets are when you choose to use them. Also, while we're here, I wanted to talk specifically on the topic of combat, which, as I talked about earlier, when the narrative and storyline in your game is not cutting it and your dual protagonist system is clearly flawed, surely the fighting in a Combat Creed game is going to be goated, right? Wrong. And this was something I saw hour after hour also in my preview. Gone are the days of LtBuzzLitebeer, say with his expansive range of attacks and defensive moves, where we had grab, we had counter grab, parry, dodges, hell, we even had taunts back then. You had to think and anticipate your way through combat back in those older AC games. Yeah, you could spam attack your way through some encounters, but when heavier enemies were in your path, you had to rethink your strategy. By comparison, in Shadows, they've stuck with the light attacks, but they've added on stance attack system, which is another way for charging up heavy attacks, along with parry and dodge, but now heavily mixed in with combos and adrenaline attacks, like, say, a flurry of slashes from Nawe, or brutal stabs, and even for Yasuke, a full-on Spartan kick. The net result here is you get this wild flashing of limbs and weapons, and say when it comes to Nawe, a lot of acrobatics and speed, but it tends to feel disconnected and floaty. For instance, with Yasuke, the physical size and strength of this man is intimidating. He's a unit, and his strikes sound like a cannon shot going off, but when you see just how little damage you've actually inflicted on your targets, those two things just don't match up. You're also going to see a lot of jank to Nawe's skills. She'll go in to assassinate a target, she grabs the target from behind, goes for the kill, and her hidden blade is like 6 inches above the head of her victim. Also noteworthy here, while we're on the subject of combat, were these two interesting design choices the devs decided to go with. The first of which are these Sin City Kill Bill black-white with red blood splatter kill screens after downing major opponents. Now, I honestly don't know if this has a place in Shadows, but it stuck out enough that I wanted to make mention of it. Also, and this was an extra bold choice they made, was the combat music when taking on big set-piece opponents, reminding me of like a Gundam Wing episode with these funky Japanese pop tracks jamming while doing combat. I mean, here, just listen to this.
What are you waiting for? Attack! Attack!
Once you finished with Nawe's storyline and paired up with Yasuke, they start out on this extended revenge tour against Shadow's Order of Ancients, again known as the Shinbaku. And now the real grind begins, because each one of these targets can take somewhere between 2 to 4 hours to fully find and eliminate. The game will say, for instance, this person has a clue about the target you were hunting, and you can find them over in, say, Harima, near the market, usually hanging around a sake brewery. And you go over there, And then you get another clue. You go attend this ceremony, you destroy this compound, and whatever it is, it always seems to be 4 separate checklist items you have to complete before you can finally go after your final target. Once that one's complete, you get to start all over with the next. Find them here, do this, and I guess what I'm saying here is that it all feels very superficial and amateurish in design. As a player, you know when you're being fed filler content designed to artificially draw out the playtime, and this, my friends, is filler content through and through. Now, just to further illustrate the design issues and bloat you find within Shadows, the Shinbakofu is laid out in a circle in your menus tab, but then you also get secondary circles of targets outside of your main villains you're hunting, and you have to kill these guys in order to gain the trust of this guy who's going to give you a clue and help you attack one of the inner circle guys. And, you know, in my 30 hours of playtime, I've done so much killing and spilled so much blood. I'm telling you, Japan has risen by 3 feet out of the ocean with just how much weight I've taken off the island. Again, I was done with Nawe's story in about 8 to 9 hours, and I'm now 30 hours into the game with all that additional time spent hunting down targets, and I've still got 4 more to go, and who knows what else waiting for me after that. All right, while we're here, we might as well touch on side content and the extra systems built into the game, starting off with level ups. Now, as you progress through your combat, you're going to earn mastery points, basically XP, that once it fills up a bar, you gain a mastery point, which you can then spend in extra active and passive perks for your characters, along with those flashy combat abilities. But to further extend the grind, Shadows also bolts on a secondary knowledge point system, where you have to unlock higher tiers of the mastery system, not by spending X amount of mastery points per rank, but by earning knowledge points through various activities, mainly visiting a temple and either praying at X amount of shrines, or by using your ping system all over the temples until you find these missing scrolls, which are usually hidden in hard-to-reach locations requiring Nawe and her grappling hook to reach. Mastery is one thing. You get that through game XP, but the knowledge points and how you earn them feels like basic and faulty game design, especially with the activities needed to achieve them. And for example, at my current knowledge level in the game, I need 14 more points to reach the next unlock. So that's 14 more temples and countless scrolls and shrines that will need to be found. Again, at least in my humble opinion, all of this is half-baked and it's really not needed. Shadows also introduced a player-explored map system, where the map comes in its original form, largely unpopulated. You've got some basic points of interest and province names, etc. But from there, the map is revealed by either you exploring, by receiving intel from saved civilians, or by using the new scout system introduced into this game, because, again, there is no eagle drone up in the sky. Now, on paper, again, this scout system sounds great, and when I heard about it, I envisioned me recruiting an intricate system of NPCs and spies, all with backstories and different ability sets, and from there I could send them into, say, hostile areas, sometimes to fight, maybe sometimes to do some sabotage, and yeah, it's none of that. What this amounts to is a very basic ping system where you move your map to an area that you want to reveal. Maybe you think your next clue is in this zone. You press the button, and if there is something of interest on that point, the scout ping will reveal it. So what you've got is this same Ubisoft map marker vomited POI showing up, and now with this added layer of systems used to reveal it to the player. Also, while we're touching on extra in-game features, a brief mention is needed on the building system, where you can construct your own forge, stables, even a dojo, and your rescued NPCs can live in safety, all while serving your cause. I don't mean to sound like a broken record here again, but in reality, what this building system becomes is a stat stick or passive attribute buffing system. Increase your available scouts from 4 to 5 by building this structure, more resources with this structure, and again, to be honest, I built what I needed. I upgraded them to the point I was seeing returns, and I haven't gone back to that area unless part of a quest has directed me to this area. There's a lot that can be done with this, I will say, maybe in the future, but the base iteration was not very immersive, and it's easily forgotten. For reference, the system used in Valhalla and Ravensthorpe felt far more fleshed out than Shadows and much easier to interact with. Alright, it's time for the final verdict on Assassin's Creed Shadows, and despite everything I've laid out in this review, and probably some of it sounds a little bit scathing, I do want to say it's not a terrible game, but it's not a great one either. Of the major reboot titles that have come before it, I'd probably place it just ever so slightly ahead of Valhalla, but far behind both Origins and Odyssey. Again, just my humble opinions here. You could probably best describe Shadows as average. But again, in 2025, with the likes of the Ghost games already on the market and expected later this year, you've also got Rise of Ronin, Sekiro, and so on, Shadows doesn't do nearly enough to set it apart from that crowded lineup. The real strength of Shadows, I've got to say, are the visuals, which to be honest with you, don't always hold together, but when they do, this game can look really stunning. I'm also told there's a massive day one patch expected, and I did receive the latest NVIDIA drivers to download ahead of release to maximize this review copy. And finally, because I know some of you are going to ask about it, expect a fully stocked microtransaction store offering up everything from undead-themed armor and weapons to map unlocks showing every hidden chest and knowledge location. As of present, the pricing model for the store, which again uses Helix credits, was not available, but expect Ubisoft to maximize every cent they can squeeze out of Shadows. But the silver lining here, and the good news, is that I haven't seen anything in my time with the game that would warrant an XP booster to push past, not that XP boosters are available in the store. Hopefully, you've got a better understanding now of the ups and downs of Assassin's Creed Shadows, and if you've got any questions, please drop me a comment and I will of course do my best to respond. But for now, there are simply better and far more immersive shinobi samurai experiences available, and even with me being a die-hard Assassin's Creed fan, I'd personally wait for a sale on this one. If you liked my review, please take a moment to hit subscribe and ring that notifications bell. Thanks for checking out my channel, and until the next one, this is LtBuzzLitebeer, signing off.